Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be looking at Cuban sports. And, it's going to be a pretty fascinating journey, I think, because it's a story. It's about way more than just, wins and losses.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we really want to try to understand how Cuban sports have been, transformed since that like pivotal moment in 1959.
It's Revolution.
It's the revolution.
Yeah.
So we've got this academic paper, Desarrollo Deportivo Cubano antes y después de 1959, Cuba sport development. And it really digs into the history. And then we've got a bunch of recent articles, just excerpts and stuff to give us a feel for what's happening now. But get ready, because Cuban sports took a truly unique path. So we're going to explore what existed before the revolution and then how things were just completely reshaped after.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that even before the revolution, you can kind of see how sports mirrored the existing social structures.
Okay, so you're saying it wasn't just about the games themselves?
Right. Exactly. You had class, race, and even like influences from the U.S. and Europe, all playing a role in what sports were available. And to who.
Yeah. And that's where this paper gets really eye-opening. It says that only 0.0025% of Cubans actively participated in sports back then.
Wow.
That's practically nobody. It makes you realize how much talent and potential was just waiting to be unleashed.
Right. And that's not just a statistic. It reflects those deeper issues like poverty, illiteracy, and the lack of access to education that a lot of Cubans faced at the time.
Wow. Yeah, it makes you wonder what the long-term impact of that limited access was, not just on individuals, but on the development of Cuban sports as a whole. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back even further. I mean, sports didn't just appear out of thin air in the 20th century.
Right. Cuba has a vibrant sporting history. It goes way back, even before colonization. If you take the Taino people, for example, the paper mentions a game they played called Batos.
Interesting name. What was it like?
Well, it involved men and women playing on separate teams. Now, what's fascinating is that this separation might reveal something about gender roles and the importance of sport within Taino culture.
Oh, so it makes you wonder if Batos was just a game or if it served a social function, a way to express cultural values.
Exactly. And then you've got mani, which enslaved people practiced during colonial times.
Yeah.
It was almost like a dance-like martial art. And sometimes the victor could even win their freedom.
Wow, that's incredible. It's a testament to the resilience and spirit of those who were enslaved. Using sport as a form of resistance and a pathway to freedom, you can really see how sport was intertwined with the power dynamics of the time.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you have the arrival of baseball in 1860,
Yeah.
brought over by students returning from the U.S., and we all know how much Cubans love their baseball.
Oh, it's more than love. It's practically a national obsession.
Yeah, think about it. This was a time when Cuba was under Spanish rule, and here comes this sport from their powerful neighbor to the north. Did it represent a threat or a symbol of American influence? Or was it embraced as a symbol of modernity and a connection to the outside world?
It makes you think about how sports can be a reflection of broader social and political forces.
Absolutely. And don't forget the influence of European sports, like fencing and gymnastics, which were also part of the mix before the revolution. These different influences created a fascinating blend of sporting traditions.
It sounds like Cuban sports were already a melting pot of cultures even before the revolution.
Exactly. And this diverse landscape produced some early Cuban sports stars, like Ramon Font and Manuel Diaz.
And we can't forget the legendary chess player Jose Raul Capablanca, a true icon.
Yeah, a brilliant strategist who dominated the world of chess in the early 20th century.
So we have this intriguing picture of Cuban sports before 1959. It's a blend of indigenous traditions, colonial influences, the beginnings of modern sport, but all within a system marked by inequality and limited access.
And that's why the revolution was such a turning point. It brought about a radical shift in thinking, a commitment to the idea that sport was a right for all Cubans, not just a privilege for the few.
And that leads us to the sports for everyone philosophy. It sounds simple, but it had a profound impact on the way sports were organized and experienced in Cuba.
Absolutely. The revolution took that idea of sports as a right and made it a reality, creating a system that aimed to develop the athletic potential of every Cuban.
That sounds incredibly ambitious.
It was. But the revolutionary government was serious about transforming Cuban society, and sports were seen as a key part of that transformation.
Yeah, it must have felt like a brand new era,
Yeah.
full of hope and possibility. So how did they actually put this philosophy into practice?
That's where INER comes in, the National Institute of Sports Physical Education and Recreation. established in 1961, and tasked with completely overhauling the sporting landscape.
So Eindir was like the engine behind this incredible transformation.
Precisely. They tackled the barriers to access head-on, the lack of resources, the lack of trained coaches, the limited opportunities for development. They launched mass participation programs, built specialized sports schools, and even made physical education mandatory in schools.
Wow, mandatory PE. That's a serious commitment to the idea of sports for everyone.
It was a statement. They were saying, we believe in the power of sport to develop healthy, well-rounded citizens, and we're going to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate.
Wow. It's fascinating to see how Cuba took this radically different approach. Compared to many other countries, so did this grand experiment work? Did INDR actually succeed in achieving its goals?
Well, let's just say that Cuba became a force to be reckoned with on the world stage. But that success wasn't without its complexities and challenges, which we'll delve into next.
So Cuba, this tiny island nation, suddenly becomes like a major player in international sports. That's got to be a pretty incredible story, right?
It is. But what's even more fascinating, I think, is how they did it. While the rest of the world was moving towards professional sports, big money endorsements,
Yeah.
Cuba went in a completely different direction.
Yeah, this whole amateurism thing, it sounds almost idealistic, especially in today's world.
It was a conscious choice,
Yeah.
rooted in their revolutionary ideology. They saw professional sports as exploitative, driven by profit rather than passion. They wanted to create a system where athletes competed for the love of the sport and for national pride.
It sounds like they were trying to create a kind of sporting utopia, a place where talent and dedication were the only things that mattered.
Exactly. And for a while it worked. This academic paper highlights their performance at the Sydney 2000 Olympics. 29 medals, placing 9th overall. That's remarkable.
9th place. Wow, that's up there with the big leagues. Especially when you consider they were competing against countries with way more resources.
Precisely. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. You look at Cuba's track record compared to other Latin American and Ibero-American countries. They consistently punched above their weight.
But it does make you wonder, could this model be sustained in the long run? How do you compete with countries that are pouring millions into their sports programs?
That's the question that starts to emerge, especially as we move into the 21st century. It's a world where sports are increasingly globalized and commercialized.
So let's talk about Cuba today. What's the current state of their sports system?
Well, these recent articles paint a really vivid picture. The passion for sports in Cuba is as strong as ever. It's like woven into the fabric of their culture.
Yeah, I loved that anecdote about the packed stadium. During the final game of the elite baseball tournament in Artemisa, the writer describes this electric atmosphere. You can practically feel the energy through the words.
And that quote about Cuban baseball fans,
Para mal o para bien, se consideran especialistas en el tema.
which basically means, for better or worse, they consider themselves experts on the subject. They're so passionate, so knowledgeable.
And it's not just baseball. They have a national holiday dedicated to sports, right?
November 19th, National Physical Culture and Sports Day. It's a celebration of Fidel Castro's vision of sport as a right for all Cubans.
That's amazing. And then you have the Havana Marathon, which draws in runners from all over the world. It's a major event, a testament to Cuba's enduring love for sports.
Absolutely. But even with all this passion, there are challenges. The Cuban sports system is facing some very real difficulties.
Well, the economic situation in Cuba is tough. It's got to be hard to maintain their sports programs with limited resources.
Exactly. And then there's the impact of the U.S. embargo, which adds another layer of complexity.
It's like they're trying to hold on to this amazing sporting legacy while facing these incredibly difficult circumstances.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
On the one hand, they want to stay true to their ideals, to the principles that made them a sporting powerhouse.
This idea of sport as a social good, not just a business.
Right. But on the other hand, they have to adapt to a changing world, a world where professionalization is the norm.
And then there's the human element. You have these incredibly talented athletes who might be tempted to seek opportunities outside of Cuba, where they can earn more money and gain greater recognition.
It's a dilemma, isn't it? Stay true to your ideals or chase after individual success. And that leads us to the big question.
So what does the future hold for Cuban sports? We've seen this incredible journey, from a system marked by inequality to this powerhouse built on this whole idea of sports for everyone. And now it seems like they're at a crossroads.
It really is a fascinating question. Can they, hold on to this unique model, their commitment to amateurism in a world that's, increasingly driven by money and professionalization.
Right, because it's almost like a philosophical debate at this point. What is the true spirit of sport? Is it about national pride or individual achievement? Or maybe it's something else entirely.
And for Cuba, it's not just an abstract debate. It's about real choices, real challenges, facing their athletes and policymakers. I mean, even these recent articles kind of hint at the tensions and tough decisions that are ahead.
Yeah, you get the sense that there's this internal struggle playing out. How do you balance these deeply held ideals with the realities of a globalized sporting landscape?
Well, think about it from the perspective of like a young, talented Cuban athlete. They've grown up in this system that prioritizes national representation and the collective good. But they also see their peers from other countries,
Yeah.
signing these lucrative contracts, becoming international stars.
Yeah, it's got to be tempting, especially when you're facing economic hardship at home.
Exactly. So what do? Do they stay and compete for the love of their country, knowing that they might be sacrificing personal gain? Or do they seek those opportunities elsewhere, chasing after their dreams of individual success?
It's a tough decision no matter which way you look at it. And it's not just about the athletes either. Cuba as a nation has to figure out how to navigate this whole, changing world of sports.
Can they adapt their model, find ways to incorporate elements of professionalism while still preserving their core values? Or will they just double down on their commitment to amateurism, even if it means facing, greater challenges on the international stage?
It's a question that only time will answer. But what is clear is that Cuba's sporting legacy is at a turning point.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of sports in society?
Right.
What values should we prioritize?
And there are no easy answers. But I think exploring Cuba's journey gives us this fascinating glimpse into the possibilities, the challenges, and just the enduring power of sport to inspire and to unite.
Absolutely. This deep dive has only just scratched the surface, though. There's so much more to explore.
To our listeners out there, we encourage you to, dig a little deeper, uncover the stories of the individual athletes, the evolution of specific sports, and the, complex social and cultural dynamics that shape Cuban sports. It's a journey worth taking.
And as always, we appreciate your curiosity and your willingness to join us on this deep dive.